Hi guys, thanks for joining us on our road trip. We are in Bethel, New York,
Yeah.
Bethel Woods, New York, and this is the original site of Woodstock. It's not in Woodstock, that's another 50 miles away. It ended up being here, and we have with us
Ruth.
Ruth, who's going to help answer the questions for us. So let's take a walk around the sign. If you look down the hill, you kind of imagine 500,000 people in this field that all got here without the internet, without Snapchat, without Facebook. It was just through communication that they all showed up here. And I guess there were even more than 500,000 that showed up, right? There were people outside that didn't make it in?
There were, it was about 500,000 people here. There were other people that never quite made it to Woodstock itself because all the roads wound up getting closed. So it might have been close to 1 million people that tried to get here, and about 500,000 that actually managed to get to the site itself.
And they only anticipated?
Well, they were really glad when they sold 150,000 tickets.
Wow.
So, this was significantly greater than what they had anticipated.
Yeah. Wow, what a promoter's dream.
Yes, exactly.
Now, if you look out into the field, try to imagine where the stage was. I guess down by those pine trees?
But right down there, right about the middle, and you see like this tiny little bowl shape there, where the grass is a little lower than the rest of the space. So that would have been about where the stage was.
Okay.
And then the stage itself had these two huge towers, one on each side, that actually contained all of the electronics that was basically hand-built for this site itself.
In a short period of time.
In a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And they had 4 banks of speakers, high speakers and low speakers, to project the sound out.
Yeah.
But then also this bowl, as well as the trees, were wonderful acoustics for the site, so that they sent the sound back down. So
it's like an amphitheater.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So I mean, they couldn't have gotten it better.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things was that originally the festival was supposed to be at another place called Wallkill.
Okay.
Okay. And they got thrown out of Wallkill a month before the festival was going to take place.
Oh my goodness.
Because it was, the residents there saw all these hippies coming in to help do the work and the construction, and they said, no, we don't want that here.
Yeah.
So this site was found 3.5 weeks before the festival took place.
Wow.
And it was just an alfalfa field. And they built everything. I mean, the electronics, water supplies, everything in about 3.5 weeks.
Yes.
The one thing that they didn't have time for was like a few days before the concert was supposed to begin. The folks doing the construction asked the people funding Woodstock. They said, well, we don't have time to build everything, so we have time to build the stage or build a fence. Which do you want? And of course they said the stage. So there was no real fence built. And that's why people just started coming like 2-3 days before the concert.
Yeah.
They just started hanging out.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell them to leave, so they said, all right, we'll just make it a free concert.
Wow. So
the
they
word
just
went
let
out
them
on the radio immediately. And that helped bring all of those people here.
Yeah. Another interesting thing we were told in the tour was, there were no cell phones back there. There was no way for people to communicate, even amongst themselves. So I guess there was a tree called a message tree.
Yes, there was.
And how did that work?
That worked. People would have pieces of paper, and they would write a note to somebody.
Okay.
posted on the message tree. So, you know, folks would just come around the message tree every now and then, especially if they were expecting to connect with someone.
Right, right.
And try to find their message,
Wow,
you know,
like
as
the
to where their
Woodstock-
friends were.
Woodstock bulletin board.
Exactly.
But on a tree, and the tree is still here, right?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
It's down there on the corner of Hurd Road and West Shore Drive, just on
Yeah.
the other side of the street there. It's this big old tree.
Wow. Well, Ruth, I want to thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're a sweetheart for doing this, and I know our
Okay.
friends back home are going to love hearing
Oh,
this.
okay.
We had a
Excellent.
great time here,
All
and
right.
we're still going to walk around and see some more stuff. And
Enjoy. It's a great place.
it's wonderful. And you
Yeah.
said they're actually going to start construction on a new stage.
Yes, they're going to try to reproduce the stage and the sound towers. I don't know exactly when,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Yeah.
but we hear that, you know,
Yeah.
they're trying to rebuild that. So, you
Yeah.
know, you have to come back in another year or two when that's here.
Oh, we're
okay?
definitely-
And bring all your friends.
We will we'll bring them all out. Here we are at the original spot of Woodstock in Bethel, New York. This is now a National Historic Site. This is the plaque, and this is the field where Woodstock took place. The stage was along the left here where you see these pine trees. And this is the amphitheater. It ended up being just a beautiful place for a concert. This was a farmer's field. He grew alfalfa here. And several weeks before the concert, they started building all the facilities to have the concert here. And it looks like in honor of the 50th anniversary, which is this year, they inscribed on the grass out there, big peace sign in the number 50. So that's pretty cool. So this is it. This is the original site of Woodstock 50 years ago. This is the message tree that was used back in 1969 during the festival. And this is almost like the texting back then. If you wanted to have a message for somebody else, you would write it down on a piece of paper. They still have a lot of the originals in the museum. You would come up to this tree and you would nail it to the tree. And then other people would come up, look for their message, and put on new messages. So that's actually how they communicated back then. And you can still see the nails that are in here that the messages were put in with from 1969. You come around over here. There's actually a nail with a head on it right here. There's another big nail here. So these have been in here since 1969 during the Woodstock Festival. So they would walk up here, put their message up here, put it on the tree, and off they'd go, and then other people would come up and look for their message on the tree. Boy, there's nails. Look at all the way up there. There's nails. Wow. But unfortunately, it looks like this tree has seen better days. They estimate the tree to be over 150 years old. Pre-Civil War, yeah, pre-Civil War. So it's had a good life. It had a great spot to see the concert, which was right over here. So a little more history about Woodstock. This has been a great day. Groovy, man. Here's one of the original posters. Peace, man.
The town, this little hamlet of Bethel here, has about 4,000 residents year-round now. It had about 4,000 residents year-round then. But that weekend in August 1969, it was the third largest city in all of New York State. I'm just going to take time out for a second so you can hear him.
I think you people have proven something to the world. 500,000 young people can get together and have 3 days of fun and music, and have nothing but fun and music, and I God bless you for it.
The reason I stopped is because I wanted you to hear him. That's Max Yasgur. He owned this land. He was the largest dairy farmer in all of Sullivan County, 49 years old, very conservative. Why on earth did he host this party here, right? Well, we'll talk more about that when we discuss him a little later on, but he's certainly a hero. He's the father of the festival. This is an artifact from the time, so it's our responsibility to show these kind of artifacts. It's not Great Britain in the late 50s. There was a great nuclear arms awareness then, and it spells out nuclear disarmament, believe it or not, because it uses semaphore. Semaphore is the way sailors communicate from one ship to the other, right, holding a flag in each hand. Each arrangement was a different letter of the alphabet. Well, this, with your arms like 45 degrees to your body, is the letter N. And then if you hold one up and one down vertically like this, that's the letter D. Here's the letter N. Here's the letter D. The circle stands for total or complete. So when you put it all together, it stood for complete nuclear disarmament. That's where that came from. Now, what do you have? Well, they didn't just want to have a concert. There was plenty of big concerts before this. Monterey and Miami, they had huge concerts in huge venues like stadiums and racetracks. They didn't want that. They wanted a total escape from the turbulence of the 60s. They wanted a multiple-day music and art fair. They wanted an Aquarian exposition, it was called. The age of Aquarius, right? Period of love, light, and humanity. They wanted arts and vendors and classes. They had classes in like yoga and cooking. They had playgrounds for the kids. They had a total experience, not anti-war or anti-government necessarily, but just, can we be on our own? Can we live peacefully and just enjoy each other, the country setting in New York State, and music? And just to show that we can, that was their idea of what they wanted to present. So it was not just to be a rock show, it was to be this total experience. Permission from the Walk Hill Town Board to have their festival. So how come we're standing here in Bethel when it should have been here in Walk Hill? Well, they were working there April to May to June to July, 3 months, building the infrastructure in Walk Hill. But at that point, a lot of the town's fathers and residents started to see some of the kids that were blowing into town over the weekend. 100,000. They knew in their minds they already sold 186,000 3-day tickets. But still, 186,000. So what do you think? Maybe 200, 210 show up? 500,000 people show up. That destroyed it. If you had a barbecue for 20 people and 50 people showed up, it would destroy your barbecue. It's the same proportion. So they ran out of food on Friday. The sanitation facilities were overwhelmed. The medical facilities were overwhelmed. Now, this is when the hog farm stepped up. I said I wanted to talk a little bit more about them. They became the security force because the 350 off-duty New York City policemen that were hired to work here were canceled by the New York City Police Commissioner the week before. They were told, you go to Bethel to work, don't come back here, you don't have a job. So they lost all of those people as far as the security. They became the security. The hog farmers, Wavy Gravy, will tell you they weren't the police force, they were the please force, is what they were. Because if you were doing something maybe a little dangerous or a little inappropriate, we'd say, hey, please, man, there's kids over here, don't, watch out, you're gonna hurt somebody. Can you do that? That's the way they kind of worked the crowd. They didn't really rule over the crowd, they kind of worked with the crowd to keep everybody happy. They also helped with the food, because the food ran out. The vendor they had was no way prepared for this kind of crowd. What did they do? Well, they came prepared. They had oats and grain, and don't forget, this is the kind of life that they lived anyway. They bought out rows and rows of area farmers' vegetables, and they took big garbage cans, they mixed the vegetables all together, mixed the oats and the grain all together, and if you've ever seen the movie where Wavy says breakfast in bed for 400,000, they were handing out these little cups. It was that. It was granola, really. It was the first time the hippies had granola, was here in Bethel. And they also helped with the medical facilities. There was a lot of injuries, but they were simple injuries where people would get cut feet. They'd get cut feet because they were barefoot. And back then, you remember when you'd pop a beer or a soda, you'd get that little ring on your finger, right? That razor sharp ring. It didn't stay on the can like it does now. Well, of course, you throw it, and somebody stepped on a lot of cut feet. But the hog farmers stepped up here. Here's what happened. We don't have any little children, so it's okay. There were some people that attended the festival that were on bad trips, right? They had too much of whatever it was, and they were in outer space somewhere. There was actually a freak-out tent where they were kind of migrated to. Now, the medical people could try to take care of this, but back then, the first line of defense medically was to administer another drug called Thorazine. And if you know anything about Thorazine, it might help you, might bring you right back down to earth, but then again, it might send you to the moon permanently, or it could even kill you. So, you know, it was a little risky. The hog farmers took care of these bad trip people. They would just cover them with a blanket, they'd caress their face, they'd give them water, they would sit with them and say, okay, man, don't worry, in another hour or so you're going to be okay, hang in there, I'm here with you. They would hold on to them. They were actually the group of people that the medical people yielded to them when someone had this kind of experience. And then the most miraculous thing about the hog farmers was this. They would help you, but then once you were helped, you were then pretty much deputized to be a hog farmer. If I fed you in the free food line, once you ate, I'd say, okay, you're full, you had enough to eat. This guy's been working in the line for 6 hours. I want you to relieve him so he can eat something. If I helped you in the freak out tent and now you're back to earth and acting normal again, I'd point to someone and say, see her? That was you 2 hours ago. I want you to do to her what I just did to you for the last 2 hours. So it was not only remarkable the way they helped people, it was phenomenal the way this people helping people just was compounded and compounded, all because of the hog farmers. So they truly are credited with keeping peace and music those 3 days. No one died because of those things that I talked about. Okay, you can't debate the fact that they were here and that this third largest city in New York State that weekend, for that 3.5 days, there was not one incidence of person-on-person violence. I challenge any city today of that size to go through a weekend in August and not have one incident of person-on-person violence. People taking care of people is what that was. That's the takeaway. That's the part of the Woodstock Nation that we can all have in our hearts. We needed it in 1969, and I think we need it even more in 2019. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for your attention. I hope you have time. Thank you so much for coming. Good job. Enjoy.